Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Pastor James Huenink here at First Lutheran Church answering your questions. And today's question is about Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. It's actually simple. What does the LCMS teach about Matthew 24:34? So let's read that passage together. Matthew 24:34, Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." To understand what's going on here, you need to know what Jesus said before this. So let's back up all the way up to the beginning of Matthew chapter 24. So Jesus and his disciples are going through the temple, and they look at the buildings, and Jesus says, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." As he sat on the Mount of Olives, disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And so Jesus rolls through a lot of these signs. He says that there will be many different Christs, nation will rise against nation, kingdom, famines, earthquakes, and he goes, all these will be but the beginning of the birth pains. He talks about the tribulation, people being put to death, nations hating each other and persecution, and the gospel proclaimed throughout the whole world. And then he goes, verse 15, "So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place," let the reader understand, "then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. Let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. Alas, for women who are pregnant and those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now. No, and never will be." So Jesus goes on to talk about false Christs and false prophets, and then we get to the immediate context of the passage. "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from the end of the heavens to the other. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." What's happening here is Jesus is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem that happens when the Romans come and destroy the city. There are a number of things that this is pointing to. First, it is all of this tribulation that will happen when people go out and proclaim the gospel. And then in verse 15, we get to see the predictions of the coming of the destruction of Jerusalem, when he talks about the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel. Now, a lot of people are going to wonder, well, what is that? It seems like it's clearly something that is going to alert the Christians that the destruction of Jerusalem is coming. That's why there's this pause, let the reader understand. Matthew is trying to make sure that when the Christians see whatever this abomination of desolation is, they will know it is time to leave Jerusalem. And there's a lot of possibilities about what it could be. There's a suggestion that when the rebels take over the temple, they place an unqualified man as the high priest and start the sacrifices that way. Maybe that's the abomination of desolation. Maybe it's the rebels who are fighting Rome when they take the temple as a fortress. Maybe that's it. Whatever it is, we're not exactly sure. It's a clear and obvious sign for the Christians that when they see this happen, they need to run. They need to get out of town and go away. So That's what Jesus is then talking about. Now, the question that people often wonder about when we say, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place, is there's a section that sounds like the end of the world. Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the heavens, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call. And they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now, a lot of people will say that Jesus is mixing his language, that he talks about the destruction of Jerusalem, and then he also talks about his final return. And that seems likely to me too, but Dr. Jeff Gibbs, in his commentary on Matthew, argues that this section isn't pointing to the end, but is pointing to things that will happen within the generation of the apostles. And so what he does is he says, in verse 34, Jesus says, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. There really isn't a distinction between immediately after the tribulation and the signs of the coming of the destruction of Jerusalem. So what he argues is that Jesus uses this hyperbolic and figurative language to talk about the destruction of Jerusalem and Jesus' triumph on Easter and the gathering of the elect by the proclamation of the gospel through the apostles and the witnesses. And that's what Jesus is talking about. So when we get to the point where it says, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place, Jesus really means that the generation of the apostles, the people who are there, will see the destruction of Jerusalem and all the signs after that tribulation where, but what Jesus is doing is using language of the Old Testament that uses cosmic destruction language to refer to the destruction that happens in Jerusalem. Now, of course, it also, by typology, points to the return of Jesus as well. So whether you think it's referring to the actual return, where clouds and power and might, or by typology, we also get a window into the return of Jesus Christ. And then Jesus goes on to say, but concerning that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels, nor the Son, but the Father only. And so we also get to see some talk about the coming destruction, not the coming destruction, the coming return of Jesus. And so there's kind of a mix of language when Jesus is talking specifically to the Christians of that generation. Watch out, Jerusalem's going to be destroyed and it's going to get really, really bad, so run away so you don't get caught up in it. And a mixture of language about his return as well. And it can be difficult to understand which is which and what's going on here, but that it's all kind of in the mix. And the Old Testament does this too. Prophets will often look out and see both a destruction that happens in Jerusalem or a defeat in battle for Israel's armies, and then combine it also with language about the final judgment and the day of the Lord, God's final coming. And so often this happens, that you get kind of a merger between present-day language and language that points towards the distant future with the prophetic utterances of the Old Testament. That's all I have for you today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.